All right, Zig coming in on the top 10 of the show, we have Sleepyhead. I'm joined by Chris O'Rourke and Rachael McNally. Chris is a singer-songwriter, guitar player. Rachael is a drummer who's also a singer-songwriter. And they have a new album out called New Alchemy, and it's based on the New Alchemy Institute out of Cape Cod. And this was a really cool conversation. One thing that really struck me about this conversation, and you guys will know this if you listen to any prior episodes, I dive into songwriters, or dive in with songwriters, and anyone really kind of about their craft and their approaches to doing it, because there's always a method to do whatever it is you do, and like it's how the individual applies themselves to that method that really kind of like shows who they are and how they do what they do, because there's only, like in music, there's only so many notes. It's how you work on making that you. It's how you cobble the stone to make the wall or the bridge that represents your art or your vision. And one thing I found that was really profound about our conversation is their technique or their mode of practice isn't set aside from everyday life. It's integrated into what they do. And what I mean by that is I often talk to singer-songwriters or artists who are also parents, which any parent knows it requires a lot of time and has its own set of rewards. But it takes away from the time you had previously to work on your craft. So I often am curious on how that is balanced, because both require so much attention. And what was fascinating about what Chris and Rachael do is they make it in a family event. And we're going to go over here, we'll work on this, you play with the kids, and then they're welcome to play with. It's really, I'll let them explain it better. But it was really interesting to make practice not just a set-aside thing, but part of life. It was really cool. Anywho, their new album's out. It's on all streaming platforms. It's about more than just the New Alchemy Institute, but that is one of the featured songs, and that's what we're going to listen to. We're going to listen to New Alchemy off New Alchemy, Sleepyhead. New Alchemy off New Alchemy, Sleepyhead. Cool stuff, right? I really dig some of the records that came before, and I recommend you guys check them out as well. The song Life is Hard is really hits home for anyone who has a creative endeavor and has been pursuing that for a while. So definitely recommend spinning that. There's some shows coming up. Check the website and give them a follow. Before we lift off, if you can like, subscribe, review, or check out any of the podcast platforms. It really helps me keep talking to cool guests and sharing their insights with you. And with that, we're going to jump into my conversation with Chris and Rachael. But anywho, so let's kind of jump into it. So tell me about, let's set the scene from the Brittany dorm. So that's where it all started. Yeah.
So I moved to New York City from Cape Cod. Okay. Very big change. And Rachael we're married now, but she was my RA when I got there. And at NYU, which was awesome. And we lived in this dorm called the Brittany, which is this big old hotel that they turned into a dorm. And it's funny, our first bass player who founded the band with us, I met him because I was in the elevator of our dorm and I had a Dinosaur Jr. t-shirt on, and he was like, oh, cool. Hey, you're coming back to my room to listen to records. So he was with another person who became a friend. I didn't know them at the time. And so we spent the afternoon like listening to records and hit it off. And then I knew Rachael because she was my RA, and it was, it was very, NYU is kind of an artistic place. So there's a lot of musicians and actors and things in the dorm. And somehow it came up, we were talking, it was the end of my first year. Mike is 1 year ahead and Rachel's 2 years ahead of me. So the end of my first year, we were talking and I was like, I think I had already brought a guitar to school. Yes. And Mike was like, I have a bass at home. I should bring it next year. And Rachael said, my dad played the drums and they're in our attic. And Mike was just like, bring him, make him teach you how to play the drums this summer and bring him. And we're starting a band in the fall.
Yeah.
And that's really what we did.
I know. And I mean, because I had never played drums before that summer between my junior and senior year. So I got the drums out. We lived in this apartment building. So that had always been the reason the drums were never out. But we just covered them. I said, we can put them in my bedroom. And there was a towel on everything, foam all over the place. So really, it's kind of a strange way to learn the drums, whacking things with not at all the normal responsiveness that you would get from a drum or a cymbal. But it did not annoy anyone. So I basically learned one main beat that I could play by the time I went back, and then I brought the drums with me, and we practiced probably that first week
all the time.
We practiced all the time
in this wicked hot room in the basement right next to the boiler. You would just be covered in sweat, but it was free, so we could just go down there. You have to sign it out, but not too many people signed it out. We set up the drums down there, and it was cool.
Oh yeah, we'd have to bring the drums down from my room every single time we practiced
in the elevator.
In the elevator.
That's gig rehearsal.
I know when you. Oh,
that's gig rehearsal. Jeez.
But yeah, it was good. It was great. Our first show was like playing. There's like a bunch of actor, comedian people who lived in our dorm who actually went on to do bigger things. But they had this little variety show they were setting up, and they wanted a musical act, kind of like Saturday Night Live or something. So. It was right in the dorm, and we had to learn a couple songs. I think we did a Sex Pistols cover.
We did.
Holidays in the Sun.
Yep. And then whatever other 3 Sleepyhead songs existed at that point, all with the same drum beat at different speeds, formed the rest of the set. And I do remember before, because again, I had never taken any lessons or certainly not played drums in front of anyone. And I remember thinking before the coffee house, I wonder, can I play the drums in front of people? I really did have this moment wondering how it was going to go, but it was fine.
Well, it's different because you're taking everything off the heads, right? And now it's feeling different. Yeah. It's louder.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You know, it's interesting, like, as soon as you plug in or when you see someone talking to a microphone in front of people for the first time, especially comedians, kind of building off that, they talk like where it's right here, and you're like, no one can hear what you're saying. Like, it points up, you're pointing out, like, like audio sound wave wise, and like, so it's like always learning those like little things like that. So that makes complete sense, and to be in front of people to like, you know, it's such a perspective shift, like. So I totally get it. I totally get that. But wow. So like in the basement, were you able to pull off the heads and stuff and be loud?
Oh yeah, it was.
It was nothing down there.
Yeah.
Nobody. There was like maybe there was like a room with a pool table or something, but didn't bother anybody.
I don't know. Yeah, it was just really deep in the basement, so we could be as loud as we wanted for hours at a time. We would just play for the limited repertoire we had. We somehow would practice for 3 hours.
You can really hone in some stuff, like, you know, like recording shows that you can really take your time on a bit. Like,
it's funny. It's like now where we're at, I think we practice almost as much now as we did then, but mainly because it's like back to being really easy, because we like Derek lives really close to us, and we have band rooms in both houses, so it's, you know, like we have some shows coming up, so it's the summer, and we're teachers, so we have the time, but we've been playing like 3 or 4 times a week for the past couple of weeks, and because Derek will just drive over and we just go down to the basement and everything's set up, PA's there, everything's there, it's great. So
best.
But those were the early days. It was really important too, because we needed to figure out how to play. And then we started getting shows. I think the first show we played was at a place called Under Acme, and I'm almost positive that we just loaded our stuff into these big bins and wheeled them down Broadway a couple of blocks from our dorm, and then down into the club. Eventually, we had a vehicle, but in the early days and when we were still in college, we did not. So
right.
Then.
Sorry. What's cool about like some spots in New York, a lot of times they have stuff there.
Yeah. That is more of a recent thing. In those days, not as much. Yeah. But No, that's actually a great thing. Like
Yeah.
we're playing in New York. We're playing in New York at the end of August, and the club has the drums and bass amp already there. So
Where's the spot?
it's called Berlin.
Berlin.
It's it's right on the corner of Avenue A and 2nd Street, which is a half a block from where Rachel and I lived for like 10 years. So
That's
it's
awesome.
really, we played there in February and it was great. So I'm really looking forward to playing there again. It's in our old neighborhood. Yeah.
That's so cool. Was it? But so you wheel it in, and that was for the comedy gig?
The comedy gig was right in the dorm.
That was
so,
in the dorm.
Okay.
So like in this room.
So that's like
in
next
the
floor.
First floor.
Yeah.
And then the gig I'm talking about was probably our first like real gig where we were at a club that we wheeled stuff to. And we probably did that a couple of times and then somehow managed to get a vehicle.
It's interesting how like kind of easy it is at first. Like you're putting all these hours and you're not really sweating about it. And like you're not, you know what I mean? When there's not like a deadline or like a recording, like you're in the studio for this, you're paying for every hour you're here. There's like it's a lot easier to enjoy that kind of like repetitiveness, even though it's not. You don't see it like that. It's interesting, and it's interesting that you said it's also easy now.
Yeah.
Setup wise and everything too. That's the absolute best when you don't have to carry anything. Yeah. It's so great.
Yeah. Like, and it's also just as it's probably even more fun now. We're having so much fun playing. It's great. So
that's awesome.
I didn't think that when I was 19 that I'd be, in my early 50s still doing it, but here we are.
That's great. Well, even when you were 19, like would you that 9-year-old, hey, you're gonna be playing in a boiler room. And
I know. Like,
it's those checks and like I was talking with a friend on that kind of topic about wanting to be where you are now and not like during the process of it being like stressed out and overwhelmed about it. And it's more of a teaching position this friend's from. So I think you guys get it, like going through college and being like stressed out. What? But yeah, it's definitely it's really cool to kind of have that counterbalance and be able to be like, this is sweet. So okay, so you're down there. What was that beat? Was it the back beat that you learned?
I could do it.
Let's Yep, that was pretty much it.
It's on our first single.
Yes. And the beat on the song Play. That was my beat.
Yeah, we recorded our first 7-inch. We recorded with Kramer, who produced the God's 500 records and was in Bongwater and all these great other New York bands. And a friend of ours just was like, his studio is amazing and it's cheap. It's actually cheaper than any of the other places and it's cooler. So we went and recorded 3 songs in like an afternoon and it ended up coming out as a 7-inch. It got some college radio play and then we were kind of off,
So from recording to college radio play, like going like what were these songs you guys like fresh for the recording batch, or were these the ones that you've been playing at all these?
They
gigs?
were like the only 3 songs we really knew at the time.
Gotcha. So they were drilled in. So going and hearing, were you recording yourselves at all prior to kind of hear back?
No, not at all.
So what was that revelation like? Because that's
it
always
was just fun.
Yeah?
It was just exciting and fun. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, and it was pretty low key. It was like set the stuff up, you start playing, he starts recording. It wasn't. We didn't go back and forth and spend. I don't even think we ever went back. I think we did the whole thing in one day.
I think we did, and then maybe I went when he was mixing it.
Yeah.
One time I was there alone after the day of recording, and I think we did not play to a click track.
Okay.
And I think that probably made sense because there weren't a lot of overdub. I don't know.
There were some.
Because I feel like when we recorded the first album that I do have a memory of playing to a click track. And I had never played to it beforehand. So it was really on the spot figuring that out in the studio. And
That's
just
hard.
sort of accepting that there is some room within the relentless click.
It's so hard. It's because it's so structured, and then usually that's the first time you're really, really working with it is when you have to and have buttons on. Was that that was Punk Rock City, right? The first record. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
that was a studio in New Jersey that this guy John Sickett found that had been like a kind of. It was not in much use at the time, so it was cheap, but they had a Neve soundboard and some good equipment because I think they had hopes of being this big. I don't even know if the studio exists anymore. I think it was called Fast Tracks at the time.
Maybe.
And then our
That's
friend Lyle, who helped produce the record, he and John Sickett just were like, "Here, we found the studio. It's going to be cheap. We're going to go record a record there." And that's what we did.
It's really cool that it's all kind of like just for fun. Like all this is like, because I was talking with I forget who I was talking with, but the idea of like kind of like things are more comfortable if it's kind of behind something comedic in a way. Like, right? If you're just out there to be silly, you're gonna write. Oh, I was talking with my friend who started a band called the Franz, and it was for they're a pro public transit band, right?
Wow.
Which is awesome.
That's a niche market.
It is.
They might be the biggest pro public transit band out there.
That's they
cool.
definitely are.
Yeah.
They've had one gig and it's success, and like they're great. But like it's like ride the bus and stuff. It's just the best.
Oh, I like it. Is that you're in Cleveland? Is that where this is?
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's like
we need that out here. The public transit in Boston is in rough shape lately.
Their drummer goes to Berkeley, so we're coming out your way.
He probably knows about the train that caught on fire a couple weeks ago in Boston. Someone jumped off a bridge. Nobody got hurt, thankfully, but something bad. One of the subway cars caught on fire outside on a bridge.
Yeah,
and people just had to get out of it.
I'm going to tell them about that.
Not good.
So they have a song.
That could be in one of their songs. They could do a Boston.
Yeah, tell them to just do a Boston Globe article search.
Yeah, a Boston Globe fire train. Anyway.
Yeah.
But hiding behind this thing that's just fun, then you're not really worried about because when you write something, put yourself out there, it is a lot, even when it is.
Yeah, it is.
And so going into it with just fun makes this comfort where you can kind of begin to have these deeper musical connections that are either hidden behind kind of ego in a way when you're not covering it like that. So that's really cool, and that makes sense. Like going through that. It's like a collection of your first records, right? It's like the first three. At first, I thought it was just like one record. I'm like, this one's really long and different. And not bad. It's like I'm getting like some kind of like Pixies vibes. Like when which is awesome because like I love the Pixies. So I was like getting some like Pixies vibes, and it's like the songwriting was it was like a different approach. But when did like vocals come, like for singing and playing drums? When did that become like? Was that always from the rip?
At first I didn't try at all. It just frankly seemed impossible, so it wasn't even on my radar. But then probably when we recorded some songs because I had sung, like my high school musical experience was all musical theater. So I sang then. Yeah. But I really wasn't trying to sing playing the drums. But then I think when we had songs that had me singing on them, then I would try. And I feel for some of those early Sleepyhead audiences who heard my first attempts, because it is really hard. Yeah. Especially I was playing so fast all the time, as compared to our songs now, beats per minute. I mean, it was really fast all the time. So I would say it took a good 10 years to get to the point where it was musical, what was coming out of my mouth. And now the past 20 years, it has become a little bit easier as time goes by. And I feel like I understand how to keep myself sort of still when I'm doing a lot of singing, even though my arms and legs are moving. It's all about like keeping my core still so that I can have the breath to hold the notes. And even still, there's probably still some duds live, but it's much better than it ever was.
I mean, it's a cliche, but the more you do it, the easier it gets.
It's true.
Right. Well, it's kind of, it's interesting, one with you doing musical and theater before, because there's a lot of rhythmic things your body has to do. I saw a student of mine do their first musical last night. And cool. I've never been much of a musical goer or fan, so I was like so proud of them. And they're senior high kid, right? And like they're moving all the bits and singing. I'm like, well, that's really rhymmic. So that makes sense why like playing drums and like singing even though it's not easier, dancing and singing.
Right? No, it's true. And I've always said to people who are interested in drums but never took drums, well, I always encourage people, it's never too late, try. Like I started halfway through college, but I do think the fact that I had been a tap dancer in high school helped me 100%, because tap dancing is all about shifting your weight as you're doing all the footwork, and I think drums are similar in that same way.
Definitely, because it's all rhythmic, right? So you're feeling, and like you're saying, like the hi-hat work and the kick drum work, being able to do that with these doing other things, it's like very cool, very cool.
I could not do it. I can't. I've not really tried very much, but playing the drums alone is so complicated to me. Right. But you can do it. You can play the drums and sing. There's some good people out there who do it too.
Definitely.
Well, and I think it's if having a sense of anything musical, you can hone in enough and figure it out.
Yeah.
And like it really brings to light when people say find your voice. You know what I mean? Like I remember asking, you guys are out of Boston. Are you familiar with the band Dispatch?
Yeah.
Okay. So I did they had a side project called State Radio, and I went on that with a tour with the singer from that, and I was asking him like, how'd you find your voice? You know what I mean? Like I was fresh out of high school, and and it was like the worst but best advice, which is you just got to keep doing it and you'll find your voice. I'm like, thanks. Like, but years later, after just doing it, it's like, that was the best advice, because like everyone has their voice, you know what it is. It's just the shedding of making it work in certain situations. And that, I think that expands to a musical palette of not just like singing, but your playing and your writing voice.
Yeah. I feel like our band is kind of in the past 15 years has found it more than, and I think a lot of it's been like playing with Derek, starting to play with Derek, who's a really great musician, and also just like realizing that what we want to sound like is going to take a little bit of work. Like with like singing, for instance, like we put a lot more effort into like figuring out how to sing well together, and there's a lot more harmonies on our new stuff. And Derek also bringing, like, we realized pretty early with him, he's a great bass player, but he started playing, he bought a Wurlitzer and started playing electric piano and some stuff, and in the studio lots of keyboards. So it's kind of really expanded things. It's actually made it really hard for us to play live as a three-piece. So we don't really do too much. Like we're playing in New York, and we have this guy who's a friend of Derek's who's going to play guitar and bass with us. Our daughter, who's 17, has played bass with us at our last show, and then that sort of frees Derek up to play keyboards. Our son, who's in college in New York State, who's 20, he actually plays guitar on the first two songs on the record.
That's awesome.
So there's been some, just having some extra musicians up there kind of like lets us loosen up a little bit,
right?
In a good way, I think.
Definitely. Well, because if you can focus on harmonies are hard. Harmonies are the worst. They're the best when you get them, but like
exactly.
the point of getting them is like there's so many minor things you can like, especially recording when you're like, we need to be. I said the word Molly, Joe. You need to go Molly. You know what I mean? Like,
or you're singing the exact same note, and our producer's like, "You guys are in unison on that." And we're like, "Oh, dang it, you're right. Give us 5 minutes.
I know. Then
give us 20 minutes." Yes, we're at the piano.
Yeah,
but we've actually gotten better at that, so we can actually do that. You know, we can like
that's true. But
figure something out.
It's better to have the right parts before you go to the studio.
For sure.
And definitely, I think the song New Alchemy on the new record, that was one where the harmony vocals were extremely difficult to zero in on. And I don't know why, because most of the time we'll sit around in one of our living rooms and just come up with the harmonies, and we'll record attempts on the voice memos, but it doesn't take that many. But with New Alchemy, for whatever reason, the melody of that song was having us generate the most insane, they were harmonies, but they were insane sounding harmonies, closer to Gregorian chants. So I think I have 20 voice memos of the many, many different attempts. And finally, honestly, we did it.
Yeah. And then sometimes you just have to go in the studio and like see what's happening and what's working. And having our producer John just be like, I'm not sure about that one.
Right.
So we try to send them to him beforehand, but there's always, you got to have a little wiggle room to knowing that sometimes you figure stuff out when you're there.
Oh, for sure. That's his. If not, you wouldn't need them.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of having that outside ear, especially someone.
It's really important to us.
Oh yeah, that's night and day, because like that's kind of a story song in a way. So there's a, I mean, like I shouldn't say in a way it is a story song, but like the harmonies in that type of song, because there's like so much lyrically going on. You have a lot of stuff to move with, right? So like octaves and perfect intervals, like the fifth and the fourth, like in the octave, those work, but those are also real. Usually in harmonies you hear thirds and sixths and like things that kind of bring out the chords. So I can see where that would be a tricky song to figure out. You guys did for sure, though.
I think it came out good. Yeah, it has a bit of a Byrds feel to it, and I mean, part of it's the 12-string guitar, but yeah, it did. It did come out. We were happy with it. It was worth it. Yeah.
Oh, but it was shocking how long it took.
I did a little research on the New Alchemy Institute.
Yeah.
And like there's that beautiful video someone made. It's like I think a mini film on YouTube, and like it just goes through the whole thing, and like it's exactly what you guys describe. And like, so you went to that as a kid?
Yeah. So I grew up in the town that it's in, and I asked my mother recently, I don't remember like what grade, or I also did this thing in the summer that was the Woods Hole Science School. I don't know if I went with my normal class, but I know I went there a couple times with on a field trip, and they, we took a school bus there, and the scientists came out and showed us around, showed us all the stuff. So that was like my memory of the place, as well as some of my friends whose parents were scientists, like were involved in it a little bit. Like when I first, like a couple years ago, when I was like, I'm going to write a song about that place. And it's been closed since 1990, or not, well, sort of, not what it was. But there was all this stuff online, and they made these journals that they would put out that would be like 50, 60 pages long with beautiful drawings and art and photos of people and articles about making tilapia fish tanks in Costa Rica. And then I would see like my friend's mom's poems on one page and things like that. So then I was like, oh yeah, I really got to write a song about this place. So I finally did, and I wanted to do it justice. It was kind of this vision of this sort of utopian, like sustainable community. And then Rachel and I were on Cape Cod a couple weeks ago, kind of scoping out for some, like, well, we were there hanging out, but we were just driving around looking for places to shoot our next video. And I was like, let's go by where New Alchemy was and see what's going on there. So I knew where it was. We went there, and we pull up in the car, and like some of the like in the song, it mentions the Ark, which was this big building that was like mostly a greenhouse that they called the Ark.
Right.
That's still there. You can kind of see it from the road through it's very like lots of trees and stuff. And there was a little road, and with a sign, like, let's just drive down this dirt road and see. So we drive down, and I'm like, yeah, this is the place. This like kind of looks a little bit the same. There's not all the stuff that used to be there, but some of it is. And so Rachel's taking some photos, and there's like a beautiful garden. And then I noticed there's like a woman gardening, and I was like, Rachel, do you think I should go talk to that woman over there who's staring at us? And she's like, yeah, I think probably you should. So I go over, and I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Chris O'Rourke. I grew up in Falmouth, and I have this band, and we wrote a song about New Alchemy. And the woman said, oh, Earl's going to want to talk to you. He heard about that. And so they had this couple who was actually, now they were very gracious. They took, like, the guy came out. They had been there since the beginning in the early 70s. And when they ran out of money and the place kind of closed, these people and some other people pooled some money together and bought the land, and they're actually trying to keep the same stuff going. Like, they grow all their own food. They were like harvesting rye to make bread. They had onions. They still have these fish tanks and this aquaculture stuff. And they built their own house, like right next to the greenhouse, they have all the archives, like bound books of all the things. And he showed us all around the place, which was super awesome.
Was great.
And I sent him some stuff, and he sent me some stuff, and he actually hasn't listened to the song yet because he's waiting till it comes out next Friday. So, but he's yeah, we're gonna. I asked him, I said, can we shoot a video here? And he said yes,
Nice.
but he doesn't know what he's getting into. Like, I'm gonna send. We're working on an email to send him. Like, I don't actually think we would get in their way too much, but it's just cool. It's a cool place. It's a kind of like idealistic, you know, and we need it more now than we did in the 70s. You know, he's you know, just this idea of how can we function without destroying the earth. Plus, it just, the name of it was so cool that's what we were like, this would make a good album title. And we were like, yeah, that's a good album title. So
that is no, and like diving into it, I was like the video I watched took you around the Ark, and like in the greenhouse, and like those fish tanks. There were like these bubbles that were like above, and like it's interesting because a lot of hydroponic things are very like topical now. Like the old science teacher we had was teaching hydroponics, and like,
oh, cool.
And like, I don't know if it all stems from this, but definitely they would be a forerunner if they were doing this.
Yeah, they were pioneers of, you know, they had wind, small scale sort of wind power there, I think. And there's a really cool map of the place, a hand-drawn map that's in the archives of the Falmouth Public Library that you can look up online, and you can see it's very high quality, so you can zoom in. They have geodesic domes and the fish tanks and the honeybees, and it's awesome. It's really very cool place. And
another like interesting just kind of concept with the word of alchemy is like how alchemy applies musically.
Right.
I don't know. Are you guys hip to, like? Are you hip to Richard Lloyd from television?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He has this whole theory that music is alchemy, and he has a whole way to relate alchemy to theory in a way. So I don't know. Like,
I gotta look more into that. I love him.
He's fascinating, and like I did a spiel with him a while ago, and like was trying to pick his brain about it, and he's like, no one wants to know about theory. I'm like, yes, they do.
They do, actually. I think they do.
But that's so like kind of diving in, like as far as like a songwriting process, like taking nuggets like that. It's like listening to the album with the boat. I can't think of the name of it. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up my notes.
That's all right.
Oh, one of our old albums.
Yeah, your album with the boat.
The Brighter Shore.
The Brighter Shore.
Yeah.
So like going from that collection of tunes that were the first 3 albums, right?
Yeah.
And like to Brighter Shore, there's like, I know like songwriting wise, it seems like there was a switch. And like, and like, not that that's just part of the process of learning how to detail things.
There
and like
definitely is a switch. I think so.
So can you describe that? Like, cause the People's Band is like, this is where it's at. I don't know what this is. I don't know where the amalgamation, but this is such a good song. I love this song.
Oh, Citizens Band. Citizens Band.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's like that. I feel like that was the point where I think I started thinking like we can't, like, being just a guitar, bass, drums, indie rock band forever is not that interesting anymore. Like, can we make the sound? Can we go bigger, different? Can we try some different things? That's probably the first record that we tried a bunch of different things. We worked with Eric Masanaga as a producer who has actually put it out on his record label. He was in the Dambuilders, so we knew him from that. So he was a good friend. You know, like there's a song on that record where we actually, the drums are a tape loop we actually took tape. It was going all the way around we were like finding things to put so the tape could go through the machine. It's like so we just were more open to like trying different sounds and different things and keyboards, pianos and things like that you didn't really find on the first 3 records. So that was fun to do. And then I think, and then from there, so we put that record out. Mike quit the band to become to be a filmmaker. Rachel and I moved to Boston from New York in 2002.
Had our first kid.
We had a kid. So between 92 and 99, we put out 4 records. And then between 99 and 2014, we put out one, like the next record was 15 years later.
Yeah. But the weird thing is the basic tracks for most of the songs we did before we left New York, like while I was pregnant with our son, Finn.
Yeah.
And then he was born, then we moved. We knew it was going to take a little while. Dan Cuddy, who was playing with us in between Mike and Derek for just a couple of years, wasn't moving to Boston. So everything really slowed down. And then, interestingly, I think it was meeting up with Derek and having him join the band in 2004 gave us some momentum. He also had young kids at the same time. So everything was just moving slowly, but it still felt like we had a purpose, which was learn the old songs, write some new songs, finish that record. And it just took a really long time. But it was a good goal to have.
Yeah,
it kept us playing all those years. And even though in 2014, when Wild Sometimes came out, we thought, all right, now we'll be back to put a record out 3 years later. So we did not achieve that goal.
It's 8 years later.
But it's 8 years
better
later.
than 15.
Much better than 15.
And we did have a reissue come out in the middle of our second
pretty
third
good.
record.
Yeah. So we're really gonna try even faster for the next project.
A lot went into it. A lot of because I think we've figured out more and more that we can do more. And I the newest record to me is, but like I mean, probably every musician says this, but to me, it is so by far the best thing we've ever done. And I feel like the next one will be, it's like, I feel like we're moving in a forward direction all the time. So the new songs are so fun to play. I'm not really interested in playing our older songs. I mean, if there are people in the audience who want to hear them, I want to make those people happy, but mostly we're super excited because now the record's finally coming out, and then we have a couple of shows where people will actually know the songs instead of us making them listen to our unreleased songs all the time when we play live.
That's such a magic feeling when you're like, okay, people are. You spend so long doing music, screaming into the void.
Exactly.
Sending the emails to get the gigs that go nowhere. Going to the places, playing for the people that didn't listen to the thing. You know what I mean? There's so much of that void, which is kind of cool because you're always either winning them over or not. There's a little bit of that. So it's always like a challenge to overcome for everything. And if you, I guess, beat yourself into submission enough, you're like, this is great. I always want to have an uphill battle. But I guess the forward momentum of writing the next thing too is always like, I feel like, I guess what I wanted to get into is like kind of like during that process, or during that time period, because I was listening to an interview with Bella Fleck and Victor Wooten, and they were talking about how like Bella Fleck has kids now, and when they were touring, Victor had kids at the time, and how that time is so important when they're that young because they're only that young for that long. Right. So priorities shift. Right. But like, how do you practice a creative, like a routine or a creative process for oneself during that? Because having kids they're so demanding, and like for like all the time. Where do you find time to kind of like do that for yourself? What did that look like?
It's slowed down. I mean, it's slowed down. We still played a couple times a year in Boston, New York, Providence, but it's sped back up a lot now. I mean, we got like our oldest is in college, and our other kid is going to be a senior in high school. They're very independent, and Derek's kids are older too. He's got one in college now.
Right. But the reality is our kids are friends with each other.
Yeah.
So that made it possible to practice on a fairly regular basis. So maybe not every Friday, but for many, many Fridays, our whole family would go over to Derek's house because his house was set up before ours was for playing music. And the kids would all play and we would practice. And sometimes then there'd be pizza dinner, or sometimes then we would just go home. Right. But that really was critical to being able to play together on a regular basis.
But also we made other thing, like a couple of our songs, like one of our songs, like Can You Leave the Light On, was written on a ski trip where we were with Derek's family and a bunch of other families. We go to New Hampshire and Vermont all the time. We just always bring our guitars when we go on those trips. We have other friends who play too, who, you know, just bring in, and we were just sitting in one of the cabins and the kids were in another cabin and some of the adults were with the kids, and Derek and our friends kind of just tolerate us disappearing for a little while and going, you know, or they listen to us as we're, you know, so it's a lot of just always having your, you know, Derek and I just always having our acoustic guitars around when we have any kind of like
gathering.
We basically do a bunch. We hang out a lot together, like as I said, in the summer, in the winter, and it's just the guitars are always there. So something pops up and you're like, oh, when we get home next week, we got to turn that, and that's going to be something, you know?
Right. And then every once in a while, most of a song will happen all at once. So like the song Tony the Drunk was on another ski trip.
That's right.
And it was terrible ski conditions. So we were all just trapped in Chris's uncle's house near Okemo. And
not a bad place to be trapped.
Not a bad place to be trapped. But no skiing was happening. And so people were doing various things in the house, and Chris headed off into the bedroom with his guitar, and I think you even said, I'm gonna like go write this song. Like something was bubbling,
basically pretty much mostly in that day. And then I was like, all right, Rachel and Derek, come in, we're gonna make up some harmonies for this.
We did write that all.
So you gotta like go. We'll
call that the opposite of the new Alchemy harmony process would be the Tony the Drunk process, because we performed it later that night.
That's awesome.
For our friends,
But what's really fascinating is it's not just a set thing to go work on. Like some people go work on it. They set an hour aside from everything to hone on like trying to write a bit. It seems like it's so ingrained to how you guys interact with. It's almost like practicing in public. It's part of it's part of every day, which is that's really cool. Like I've asked a couple people about that, and like I guess it wasn't as that you guys made it really clear. I guess like maybe they just made time and had someone watch something, but like that's so cool that it's so integrated. So like, how was music like for your kids? Are they like, Dad, I get it, or like, what are they?
It's
like,
funny. People are always like, wow, it really must run in the family or something, and I'm like, I guess I don't. They drove almost everything. Like our son Finn, when he was like in fifth grade, he like saw this ad for like School of Rock summer camp. He's like, I might want to try that. He was not really ever into sports too much. We're like, sure. And then 5 years later, he's still teaching now. He's still there, and it was really great for him.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And then our daughter did Girls Rock Camp Boston, which actually she just did this past week as a counselor in training, I guess, or CIT or something. And she, so he played guitar in high school, even in the jazz band in high school. And at the high school, they went to their jazz. They're like really, I mean, they're so good. They went to New York City, they went to New Orleans for the competitions and things. Jazz isn't really either of their thing, but at school, that's what it is. And the teacher is so phenomenal. But and then Neve just got into the bass, and our daughter.
But also drums. So it's interesting. They each went for a string instrument as their primary instrument, but each have picked up the drums on their own and can do it.
But we've never pushed them. Like our son has this band. They sort of, they were when he was in high school. The oldest one was in college. It's called Gap Teeth. And they were awesome. I went to see, this was my most dangerous COVID thing I ever did. But, they played like a house party in like the college neighborhood in Boston, like hundreds of people. The doors were open in the base. It was amazing. I was like, I couldn't believe it. He was like 19 years old. People knew the words to their songs and stuff. It was super fun. But they're very self-motivated with it. They're just, they're into it. Yeah. Our daughter has like 2 different bands. Like, we'll come home after school and she's like, oh yeah, she'll have friends down in the basement playing. So, obviously it's highly encouraged in our house, but it's never, I never feel like we pushed them towards it.
Nope.
I think they just were around it maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's a possibility when you see someone do it. right?
Yeah,
And when you see
exactly.
someone, and how you guys like kind of integrated that into like, this is what we do when we gather with family and friends. It's
Totally.
like so beautiful. And like now it's not just a thing you can do, it's a thing that just happens. It's not
Right.
and that almost makes it demystified, where it's just like, oh, you get together and you come up with an idea and you just spew it out. Like it's not like you go to the woodshed and work on your minor 2-5-1s and learn how to play over that before you even attempt to play the Coltrane changes. It's like you just do it. That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, even other friends of ours, close friends of ours, play music like guitar, harmonica. We have a friend who plays harmonica, and like, so if we just hanging out, having a barbecue in the backyard, there's like a bunch of like non-professional musicians, and we just sit around and sing. And like, what should we do? Like, get that song up on the iPad. That's not so hard. And like, it's awesome. So I guess the kids have just seen that their whole life, that like, most gatherings, people are listening to music, but also often playing music. So that's low key, but
that's awesome. Yeah. Are they the kids in Life is Hard?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So,
and then Derek's middle son is the bass player.
Yeah. Okay. So. Those are that's our son and daughter, and then his middle son. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's such a well-written song on a side note. I was listening to that. I'm like, yep, check that age mark. Checking that age mark. Like,
that's the first song we wrote with Derek. And Wild Sometimes the song. So that was like, and so we were like, we got to have at least a couple songs with Derek on this record. So we recorded 3 songs sort of in the final stages. The other 9 songs were, as Rachel said, were started many, many years before. And I think writing those songs with him, we were like, oh yeah, we're going to make a really good record someday. Time to get started on it. So
well, clearly did. What was like kind of like, as far as like working with Derek, what was kind of like, when you see someone's process a little bit, what was something that was uniquely like his, that kind of like put flames under what you guys were doing? Does that make sense?
A lot of it is well, he is a little bit, has more musical training than we do. He went to Berkeley for a little while. He can play stand-up jazz bass, which he did for a while. After he started playing with us, he started writing his own songs too, which are amazing. He put out a solo record just himself on Bandcamp and streaming called Living with a Ghost. I think what we realized at a certain point playing with him, he's like, maybe I should play. Oh, I just remember, like, I bought a Wurlitzer today. We're like, really? He's like, yeah, it's kind of beat up, but I think I can fix it. And so he brought it over, and like a song like on the new record, Some, was a song that I wrote, but the whole thing starts with this Wurlitzer part that just totally makes it totally different and better. And I was like, wow, we need more of this. We need to like, this needs to be part of our songs. And then I also think the singing, like really working on getting the singing better and having there be harmony parts and things like that. He was a driving force in that. He's also such a good bass player, but that's almost like the easiest thing for him. That's just there. That's like, we take it for granted, honestly, that the bass is going to be solid when we record.
It's funny, but it's like one of those things. Like if it's good, you don't notice it type thing.
Yeah.
Like if you play a bar gig and you're playing for the 4 hours, and like if you're doing good, no one claps.
Yeah.
But as soon as you like biff one, everyone's like, huh? They notice. Yeah. Oh, that's okay. That's having that kind of functional harmony like laid out in a way, like when you're just figuring it out by ear, you just know what's right. And like, there's nothing wrong with it because it feels right. But having someone be like, "Well, you should dip down because that's a a seventh."
He can be very clear and specific about what to try with a reason behind it,
which
not
is
just trial and error.
Which Rachel and I have absorbed to some degree, and I've gotten a lot better at it ourselves too. But it's also like Sleepyhead never had before Derek, there wasn't a Sleepyhead practice where we sat there for 2 hours with acoustic guitars trying to sing things better. So like, and that's fun too. I mean, so that it's like a whole bunch of different musical muscles have been getting exercised lately. And I feel like it's made our band better. Like a thing that I've noticed with us is the summer we play a lot, as you can imagine, because we're not teaching. And then Derek went to Hawaii for a couple of weeks. So we had played, but so like before that, there was like a week where we played almost every day. And by the end of that week, at the beginning, I remember saying, oh, we don't have that loose vibe. But by the end of the week, I was like, oh my God, we have that vibe going right now. It's so pleasant. It's like, the songs kind of play themselves. And you're not thinking about it. And then he came back, and the first practice it was back to like a little stiff, but it's going to come back. So now it's kind of perfect. We have the show in New York, but we have like the whole week beforehand to practice pretty much every day. So I think we'll be in good shape.
Nice. Well, it's interesting with like just the idea of like harmonies are, after a while, there's something you don't think about, you feel in a way. You're like, oh, I know if I go here, it's a 6 compared to where you're at or whatever. Yeah. And like with most music, it's like you have this detailed thing to think about, like, oh, it's a 16th note run, let me play it or fill. And eventually you just feel it. And it's interesting because it's one of the things that are completely written out, so you know exactly how it feels and sounds. But like it's different when you actually experience that feeling compared to like trying to describe it. And like that would make sense that now it comes more natural from applying that. And like it's a beautiful thing, like something so theoretical becomes just feel after a while.
We have a friend who is the music director at a kind of prestigious high school in Massachusetts. And she's a piano player, but one of her kids is a violin player, the other's a viola player. And the younger one, who's still in high school, had a recital at the beginning of the summer, like just pretty much solo on the viola, one song with a piano accompaniment. And he's so good. This kid is so good. It's insane. And hearing him play like this music with no music in front of him. So he's played this song enough times. He's got it completely memorized, but it's not like rock music. It's nothing repeats. It's like 8 minutes of never playing the same thing twice. And he's just got it. It's just stunning in an awesome little room that just was designed to sound perfect. Yeah. It was like very, very, very fun to hear that.
That's so
very
cool.
different kind of music, but
right. But it's so cool
really
to be able to appreciate it. You know what I mean? Like it's easy to kind of be like, oh, this kid's killing what I spent years trying to do this thing, and this kid's just ripping it. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy.
He puts a lot of work into it.
Right. But, well, it's easy to get caught up in that thing, but it's also, I think it's harder to be like moved by it, especially when you dive into the thing, into whatever field it is. If it's music or sports or whatever, it's easy to be jaded by someone who's just kill. But you're right. You recognize the time that's put into it. Yeah. I think that makes the difference. Do you guys ever like, do any students ever pop up and be like, do you know this band? For you guys, or is this separate?
Yeah, not so much. I wonder if kids ask Derek that. Yeah, because he taught a class that was like physics and music, so I feel like that would have been very normal for that to come up. But I'll have to ask him.
Like our own kids, are sometimes surprised by people we know from back in the day. My son is a huge Yo La Tengo fan, and he just thinks it's really cool that we're friends with them. We've been friends with them for decades. So
because you guys did touring with them, right?
We did do some touring with them. Yeah, we did a Sleepyhead tour with them for like a week in the Midwest, and then we did. In fact, I think we were with them when Kurt Cobain died. I'm remembering.
I don't remember which. I remember that, but I don't remember.
I've also done some right when they were like really starting to get big, and they didn't always have a crew. I went to Europe with them for like 4 shows as a roadie. That was fun. Didn't know what I was doing either, but at that time it was fine. Tuning guitars, basically.
Yeah. Well, at least you weren't plugging stuff in because they got a whole other outlet over there.
No, I actually have a very funny memory of that. They played 2 shows in Oslo and 2 shows in London, and they flew me out there with them to help, And I remember in Oslo, I went on stage and I played the Soft Boy song "I Want to Destroy You" with them on guitar. And after the show, we were like, these fans were coming up to them. That was great. That was great. And then this one guy, this Oslo, Norway, right? He looked at me. He's like, "Oh, that was great. That song you played on too." And I said, "Oh yeah, he wrote that song." The guy thought I wrote the Soft Boy song. But yeah, my students are too young, my fourth graders, to.
Yeah.
But your high school kids.
Yes, they find it intriguing.
What about the people who came to our show in New York?
Oh, well, those, yes. But I'm thinking of my current students. You know, they think it's interesting that I play drums in a band and have for so long. But yes, at our shows in New York, every so often, kids that I taught back in the 90s who are now fully adults show up, and that is remarkable to see. So, cool. This girl Ashley was there at our last show with a friend Ian, and she had pictures on her phone of the yearbook from the year she graduated.
Every once in a while, there's like a random YouTube comment on something of ours, like, "Oh, Miss McNally was my teacher back in."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I'm living for that day. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Living for. I got one kiddo who's like, he's in like 4th grade now, and like I did a fundraiser for him to get a service dog. So he'll point it out. He'll be like, "Oh, Mr. Dave does this." I'm like,
cool.
Just keep it quiet. Everyone's got phones. Like, but that's awesome. I was just curious, like, because not too many people can have that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that like that there's physics. You said that a whole course on like music and physics. Did that kind of come into this idea of a new alchemy on this album? Was there any like, I don't know, conversations?
I don't think.
No?
Yeah, no, that's just a random connection, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like I saw this really cool book called The Physics of Jazz, and like I wonder if he read that book too. Like, is that
may be.
I know. We'll have to ask him.
But it really is all physics, isn't it? It
is.
That's why those harmonies sound good. It's like you can.
Right.
It's like a.
Ratios.
I know. I was reading a little chapter in a philosophy book just yesterday, kind of starting to get ready for the school year, and there was a good quote. And now I'm going to forget the philosopher saying, like, there's music in the spheres and there's math in music. I don't know. It was a very cool quote.
It's one of those mornings. We're going to get through this, guys. We got this. Very cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for talking with me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank
New
you.
Alchemy comes out August
19th.
So Friday.
Okay.
It's coming Friday.
And there's that show coming up, which I'm going to guess, is that the release show?
Yeah. So we got August 27th in New York City at Berlin is like our New York release, even though we don't have physical anything yet. We hope to someday, but we just needed to get it out. And then we're playing in Boston on September 17th, which it's just got confirmed the past couple of days. So I haven't, it's like not on our website or anything yet, but and I'm working on trying to get a couple of other things in the fall.
Okay.
Not too far off, but our dream is, and it might be next summer when we have more time, because most of this summer was focused on getting the record out. Like Cleveland, for instance, we could get out to Cleveland and in one of our school breaks, and we definitely will.
We'll put something together.
Yeah.
Fun diving into your guys' career and music and like.
Yeah, it's fun. It was very fun for us to chat with you today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Likewise. And I look forward to maybe doing some shows down the line.
That'd be fun.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be so cool.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig of the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.